Welcome to Bridge Buzz, our monthly newsletter where we share the latest news, updates, resources, and more with you, our extended Bridge community. A note from Cheryl Dijja, founder and CEO. Dear everyone, there's something about this time of year that invites both reflection and resolve. In a season rooted in freedom, identity, and collective action, we're reminded that the work of equity isn't seasonal, it's structural. This month brings both Pride Month and Juneteenth, two powerful reminders that advocacy, resistance, and community have always been the heartbeat of progress. But this year, these observances land differently. We're not just honoring history, we're confronting new threats to hard-won rights. From executive orders and legislation targeting LGBTQ+ protections to efforts that distort the legacy of Black freedom and attempts to dismantle DEI, we're facing a coordinated campaign to roll back progress. In moments like these, purposeful action is not optional. It is essential for our people, for our principles, and for our future. Once again, these people have been fighting in a cultural war for many, many decades. I can understand the I just want to grill mindset, but you're always going to lose a war if you decide you do not want to fight in it. It's not going to give up at your doorstep because you refuse. They will keep waging on, and eventually the things you love will also come to collapse. That same urgency and resolve fueled Bridge 25. We explored what it means to lead with radical integrity, to leverage inclusion as transformational to business, and to build with culture, not for it. And while the external climate may shift, our values must not. We are not alone. We are not powerless, and we are not backing down. Say the people who have been in institutional power for literal fucking decades. Holy shit. For now is the time to protect what matters and build what's next. Forward together with courage. It's as I've been saying, DEI is not going away. We've been making some nice little victories. Like, it's been nice to see some retreats. But a lot of the companies saying that they're dropping it aren't actually. And their entire goal in subverting language, once again, trying to obfuscate what they're doing, trying to reel back the public noticing all the DEI efforts, is so that they can continue building what's next. The Community Call, the Bridge Community Call, is a vibrant monthly gathering of diversity, marketing, and business leaders committed to driving systemic change within our organizations and the industry at large. Pride is not just about celebration, it's about visibility, safety, and the fundamental right to exist without fear. This year, with LGBTQ+ rights under coordinated attack, it is only fitting that our June call will honor Pride Month. Join us as we discuss the complexities this population faces and how we can support them. Before I move on, I want to highlight this first sentence again. The Bridge Community Call is a vibrant monthly gathering of diversity, marketing, and business leaders committing to driving systemic change within our organizations and the industry at large. And people have incentive to lie to you and say that Bridge is not something systemic, Bridge is not something that's going to go anywhere, this is just people flailing out because they're losing and they don't want to lose the power that they have. There are content creators that have incentive to lie to you about this and to paint people like me as the grifters instead. I would love to be wrong about Bridge. It would be wonderful if I was, but based on the heavy hitters that are involved in Bridge, the people in industry that are supporting Bridge and funding Bridge, that's absolutely not the case. Once again, on the executive committee, you have people from Nielsen, Milk Pep, Gap, Sonos, The Weather Company, and Discover, being a payment processor. You have directors at Bridge from Saucony, GM, Triple Lift, Gum Gum, iHeartMedia, again Discover, a different person, Channel Factory, Gaio, Michelin, Publicis Group, USTA, the Index Exchange, H&M, Best Buy, Amazon Web Services, the Ad Council, Extreme Reach, Sephora, and again, Sephora is one of the groups that spearheaded funding for Bridge years ago, Group M, Adsmobile, Nestle, PwC, Direct Digital Holdings, Indeed, this looks like Shrips, I don't know what Shrips is, JLC, the Brand Safety Institute, McKinsey and Company, Superset, IPG Media Brands, Identity and Impact, Sephora again. And then there's bridge staff and contributors, and then there's more strategic advisors from different companies, as well as Campbell's and different universities, as well as Emory, University of Indiana Business, the fucking University of Georgia. So these are all people directly linked as either diversity officers, CEOs, COOs, marketing officers. So it's not just DEI positions that are involved in this. It's regular company people. Regular company positions outside of just solid DEI work that are funding this, that are a part of this, that are part of the conversation. I told you guys one of the last meetings I went to with Bridge had the marketing director from fucking McCormick, like the spice company. You always knew something was up with iHeartMedia since they started buying up and neutering all the radio stations since like 2010. Does anyone have a full list of who these guys are associated with? I don't know if there is a full list, because again, we know that they're associated with McCormick. Cheryl Dijja expressed interest in working with them, but they're not listed on this page of leaders. We know that Cheryl Dijja works closely with Microsoft. Microsoft is not getting rid of DEI. She spoke on a Microsoft panel at the Cannes Lions Festival recently. So like we know that there are other companies not on this list that are still involved with Bridge. And the other thing that I brought up from that link, it only brought me to the page about Bridge Forward 25. So this is over. And so like you can view their agenda that they talked about at the beginning of March. And you can see some of their people who were there to give speeches and whatnot. Dr. Wiley Davi, she shows up in some of the Bridge meetings at the end of the month occasionally as well. There's a fucking chief equity officer from Planned Parenthood that was giving a speech at the Bridge fucking shit. Oh, Netflix was here? Elf? That doesn't surprise me. But like, if I go down a bit more, they have their list of speakers here, and then they have their list down here of their full attendees. So even if these people aren't listed on the leadership page for Bridge, these are attendees that went to Bridge's retreat and are interested in working with Bridge and promoting the messaging and the cultural transformation that Bridge wants the corporate atmosphere to have. And here is the Bridge 25 attendees list.
You're getting a vigorous spanking because you've been a bad girl.
And again, if you look at some of the titles here, they're not just DEI officers or directors or managers. You have people here that are revenue officers, executive directors, another revenue officer. You have agency partnership manager here, a chief investment and media officer, professor of English and media studies, director for programs and communications, CEO. There's a Brand Safety Institute senior fellow. So like you have people that aren't just part of the DEI spectrum. And from companies that were attending Bridge, you have AdsMobile, All Tech is Human, Alpha Precision Media, Bain & Company, Basis Technology sent a bunch of people, Bentley University has a couple, Big Brothers Big Sisters of America, Bomesi, the Brand Safety Institute, Burr & Foreman LLP, Channel Factory, CMI Media Group, Colossus SSP, Corewell Health, Costco, Creatura Advertising, Davis & Gilbert LLP, Develop Well, Digitas Health, Direct Digital Holdings, Draper, Elf Beauty, Elizabeth Richardson Center and DACA recipient. Interesting. I don't know what that means. Ellery Talent Strategies, Flywheel Digital, Gale, Gaio, Gap Inc. sent a bunch of people. General Motors, Glad, Group M sent a bunch of people. Gum, H&M sent a few. Harlem Run, Identity and Impact, iHeartMedia, Indeed sent a couple people. Index Exchange, ING, International, I don't know what company that is. That's a very vague name. Interpublic Group of Companies, Jake's Del Mar, I don't know what that is either. JAMS, the JCRC Bay Area, JLC Ventures, Kaludi Consulting Ltd, Coder LLC, Leo Constellation, Lit Enterprises. That sounds really familiar for some reason. Magnet Media, McCann World Group, Michelin North America, Milk Pep, Multnomah County Department of Community Justice, the Human Resources Manager. What the fuck? Multnomah County Department of Community Justice? What a weird person to send. Museum of Fine Arts Boston, My Code Media, the NAACP, National Geographic Society, NBC Universal, Vice President, Inclusion, Advertising, and Partnerships. New and improved, Nielsen sent a bunch of people, the Planned Parenthood Federation of America, Ponderance, Portalis, Price Waterhouse Coopers LLP, Publicist Group sent a bunch, Purpose Worldwide, Quigley Simpson, Raptive, Richmont, Robins Have Wings, Running Industry Diversity Coalition, Rutgers Law School, Sash LLC, Saucony, Self, Sephora, Sonos Inc., Strike Oil, Subaru of America sent a bunch of people, T. Bryce Consulting, the Advertising Council, the E.W. Schrips Company, the Paris 3. Interesting. The Transformation Guild, the Weather Company, the A-List, Tinuiti, I don't know what that is, Topspin, Triple Lift Inc., True Access, United Talent Agency, USTA, Walmart, XR Extreme Reach, and Yelp. Yeah, Subaru the car. You're going to contact that person from Multnomah County because you literally live in that county. If you contact somebody from that county to ask about the Multnomah County going to bridge, please open a mod ticket. I would be very interested in what you can find out. But I feel like you probably won't get too far talking to the specific human resources manager that went, so you'd probably have to talk to somebody else to get the inside scoop. Multnomah County is Portland? Oh, fuck! That makes a bit more sense. Is that the McCormick Foundation or McCormick & Co. the Spices? McCormick & Co. the Spices. It's the McCormick & Co. Spices that are working with Cheryl Dijja. Yeah, this is a fucking long list of company and corporate attendees for the bridge shit. So it's like, I feel like anyone at this point who is still trying to claim that, like, bridge are just lashing out, they're worried about losing power, they're merely a reorganizing of language, they're not effectual, they're not gonna do anything. I got a year and a half of reading the shit coming out of their mouths, man. Stop lying to people. Bridge Imax. While the attacks and misrepresentation of DEI continue, Bridge believes our mission to help companies operationalize inclusion as a business practice is stronger than ever. The growth opportunity is, one, we define inclusion as the deliberate integration of all individuals and the appreciation and respect for who they truly are as valued contributors. Number two, our vision of inclusion sets up individuals across social groups, populations, ethnicities, cultures, abilities, and identities to thrive and contribute to business success, leveraging their lived experiences and backgrounds to authentically serve all potential growth markets. Imax is the tool to turn inclusion into practice. Imax is a framework of over 80 business practices across 5 pillars of the organization that provide the guidance to companies on 1, how to build an inclusive brand by laying a strong foundation with talent, 2, how you see your market, 3, how you serve the market by placing inclusion at the center of your product development, and 4, how you show up in the marketplace with your media, creative, and communications. The research proves the impact of inclusion on sales. Early research analyzing the impact of inclusion on engagement and purchase intent shows significant results on par with the effect of pricing and function strategies. The effect of pricing strategies. I want to remind people that part of the Imax Inclusion Index is the equity of product availability as well as the equity of product pricing. Membership. Bridge inclusive marketing definitions for public review and comment, a new industry paradigm, inclusive marketing. Inclusive media planning is often siloed under multicultural marketing, fragmented, inconsistent, misaligned with today's consumer landscape. The industry still lacks shared definitions, cohesive frameworks, attribution models, and equitable systems, which has resulted in an inefficient ecosystem that stunts both growth and impact. Once again, the very first video that I showed is Cheryl Dijja talking about what she wants to do with Bridge. This is essentially what she said. She said that DEI should not be a siloed approach, just put in your either marketing or a specific DEI division. The entire goal of DEI is to eventually dissolve the DEI teams and have your DEI practitioners just be working normal roles at the company, be fulfilling normal roles while also doing their DEI priorities. Bridge convened a committee of leaders from over 50 companies across the marketing and media ecosystem, from trade groups to Fortune 500 brands. Together, we built this foundational framework, a set of definitions designed to unify our work and sharpen our impact. And then Project Forward is their new thing that they've been doing. And I've been slowly reading through the Project Forward emails. I think I got up to like 5 or 6 and they're at like 11 or 12 now. Led by Bridge, Project Forward is a cross-industry initiative designed to chart our collective path forward and meet the current moment head-on. In partnership with top experts in academia, law, and our board members, we are dedicated to equipping, educating, and empowering leaders in diversity, equity, and inclusion, marketing, and business to continue to drive inclusive innovation and sustainable growth. So all of these letters that I've been reading to you from Project Forward, as far as we have gotten into them, they make a specific point on giving the lawyer perspective, because they're working with multiple lawyers who give the perspective from a lawful point of view, saying how the executive orders don't actually apply to most of these companies, especially if they're not receiving any federal funding. And if they are receiving federal funding, that there are ways to get around the executive orders because they are overreach in these lawyers' opinions. And when you also read our board members, you remember that there is the bridge perspective part of the Project Forward emails. And when they say our board members here, I can only imagine from that leadership page that we read, these are all the industry insiders, the CEOs, the COOs, the revenue officers, etc., that are working with Bridge, that are helping inform Bridge in these Project Forward emails, talking about what they're doing in industry to get around all of the current climate of DEI. So these aren't just Cheryl Dija's words, they're being informed by the board members, and the board members are from other companies. How is it overreach when they're receiving federal funds? I'm not entirely sure, because reading through all of these Project Forward emails is just a very, very long and tiring schlock through both subversive and corporate language. So I don't know how they're claiming that it's overreach and that people don't have to do anything with it, especially when we just keep gaining ground as far as those executive orders go. But they have been trying to push back on like, oh, the wording is too vague. You can't get rid of what DEI is because you can't define what DEI is because we keep changing the definition. And so they keep changing the definition and we can't play on the same field as they do with subversive language. It's gotten a little fucking rough, man. Every Friday, Project Forward provides critical updates on executive orders and legislative developments, featuring legal interpretation from Stacey Hawkins, diversity and employment practices consultant and Rutgers professor of law, as well as Jessica Golden Cortez, partner, labor and employment group, Davis and Gilbert, LLP. We will also include the Bridge point of view on tangible actions to consider. Here are some insights from the high-impact Bridge 25 session that cuts through the noise, clarifying what's legal, what's smart, and what's next. If you're navigating board pressure, legal uncertainty, or internal doubt, this is the clarity you need to lead forward. Number 1, executive orders are not law. Number 2, Title VII remains the legal foundation. Number 3, disparate impact is still enforceable. Number 4, DEI programs are still legal. Number 5, overcorrection is the bigger risk. Number 6, words matter, strategy matters more. This is again where they're saying pull back from the public eye, cut your DEI teams, as that was always the plan in the first place, make things less publicly accessible, remove notations to DEI in your papers. And number 7, this moment requires leadership, not hesitation. The political landscape is shifting fast, and with it, the legal, reputational, and operational risks facing companies committed to equity and inclusion. In this moment, leaders cannot afford to be passive or reactive. They must be informed, pragmatic, and resolute. I wish that their insights weren't just a 7 bullet point list and there was like some sort of video I could watch. We've looked at this read more page before. They've started archiving all of their Project Forward weekly letters, which is really good for us because the way that we were trying to archive this shit, it came out real scuffed. And then we have the spotlight. Happy Pride Month. Black transgender luminary Tourmaline brings to life the first definitive biography of the revolutionary activist Marsha P. Johnson, one of the most important and remarkable figures in LGBTQIA+ history, revealing her story, her impact, and her legacy. We talked about this the other day when we were talking about the rewriting of history. Marsha Johnson was a gay man who practiced drag. And many gay people have come out against the rewriting of history and trying to paint Marsha as a transgender woman as opposed to the drag queen that he was. Marsha, The Joy and Defiance of Marsha P. Johnson by Tourmaline. Black transgender luminary Tourmaline brings to life the first definitive biography of the revolutionary activist Marsha P. Johnson, one of the most important and remarkable figures in LGBTQIA+ history. Thank God the revolution has begun, honey. Rumor has it that after Marsha P. Johnson threw the first brick in the 1969 Stonewall Uprising, she picked up a shard of a broken mirror to fix her makeup. Marsha, a legendary black transgender activist, embodied both the beauty and the struggle of the early gay rights movement. Her work sparked the progress we see today. Yet, there's never been a definitive record of her life until now. Written with sparkling prose, Tourmaline's richly researched biography, Marsha, finally brings this iconic figure to life in full color. We vividly meet Marsha as both an activist and an artist. She performed with RuPaul and with the internationally renowned drag troupe, The Hot Peaches. She was a muse to countless artists from Andy Warhol to the band Earth, Wind & Fire, and she continues to inspire people today. Marsha didn't wait to be freed, she declared herself free and told the world to catch up. Her story promises to inspire readers to live as their most liberated, unruly, vibrant, and whole selves. Tourmaline is an award-winning artist, filmmaker, writer, and activist whose work is dedicated to Black trans joy and freedom. She is a Time 100 Most Influential Person in the World awardee and a Guggenheim Fellow. She has frequently appeared on ABC News as well as in the New York Times and Vogue. Her art is in the permanent collection of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Tate, and Getty Museum. She created the critically acclaimed film Happy Birthday, Marsha, and she has directed pride campaigns for Dove, Marc Jacobs, and Reebok. She previously worked with Queers for Economic Justice and the Sylvia Rivera Law Project. Interesting. So we have this from BlackPast.org. Marsha P. Johnson, 1945 to 1992. Marsha P. Johnson was an African-American drag performer and social activist. The fifth of 7 children, they use she, I guess because drag queen, was born Malcolm Michaels Jr. to Malcolm Michaels Sr. and Alberta Michaels on August 24th, 1945. I don't know if they get into the background. On June 28th, 1969, Marsha Johnson became one of the faces of the queer revolution. She went from her own party uptown to the Stonewall Inn on the corner of Christopher Street and 7th Avenue, arriving after the Stonewall uprising had begun. The riot stemmed from members of New York's LGBTQ community being targeted by the New York Police Department. LGBTQ people were routinely rousted, hassled, and arrested on questionable charges. That summer Saturday, their anger reached a breaking point after the police returned to Stonewall Inn for the second time in 2 days. According to Johnson, the police had forced her and others out onto the street to line up and be frisked the night before, and then returned the next night and set the Stonewall Inn on fire. 23-year-old Johnson and her friend Sylvia Rivera were caught up in the Stonewall Uprising, which went on for several days and is credited as the catalyst for the gay movement of the late 1960s. The uprising spawned the first gay pride marches across the country in 1970, and in the same year, Johnson and Rivera founded Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, or STAR, which clothed, fed, housed, and advocated for transgender youth from a tenement on the Lower East Side. So that gives you a little bit of information. And that's also interesting that they don't mention the brick thing here. So I wonder if that brick thing is also like completely fucking made up, since this one says that Marsha arrived after it had already begun. I have a second link here honoring a queen, the Marsha Johnson story. Marsha Johnson, aka Malcolm, was a self-proclaimed gay man, drag queen, transvestite until his death in 1992. So how did Johnson's story come to be so drastically revised? Marsha Johnson, aka Malcolm, repeats the first sentence for some reason. At the time, transvestite was synonymous with drag queen, and Marsha Johnson was the RuPaul of his day. So how did Johnson's story come to be so drastically revised? How did a gay man, a drag queen, who proudly proclaimed himself as such in documentary footage, filmed just 4 days before his death, come to be expunged from manhood post-mortem? Honoring such an incredible legacy with honesty and integrity shouldn't even be a question. Yet the pages of Johnson's life have been rewritten. The people who were cut into Johnson's footage long after his death attempt to recategorize Johnson as a woman, to cast him out of the very category of manhood and homosexuality, which he so clearly claimed with pride. This isn't the first revision of history that's been promoted by the male-dominated LGBT and its media, or as many lesbians call it, the gay boys club. Hashtag not all gay men. In fact, it happens so often it's hard to stay on top of it, especially as lesbian voices are censored now more than ever. Just the other night, my wife and I tried to watch a movie, Colette. The gay men who wrote the script rewrote actual lesbian history, our history, making yet another historical figure, a butch lesbian, into a man post-mortem. In 2017, with the October release of a Netflix documentary, a new argument arose. Who has the right to tell Johnson's story? Lesbians weren't even considered in that equation, but perhaps we should have been, because here I am, a lesbian, with the most obvious answer to that question. The only person who should be telling Johnson's story is Johnson. Good thing he left us a transcript. So below, I've compiled some of the last words Johnson ever spoke in the footage filmed just 4 days before the end of a beautiful, complex, and often heartbreaking life. My mother said being homosexual. She said, I was lower than a dog. She said, you're gay, you're lower than a dog. But first, a little background. In childhood, Johnson survived sexual assault and severe homophobia. In adulthood, Johnson survived mental illness, abuse, and exploitation. And from that darkness, Johnson still managed to create a light to make the world a bit brighter for the next generation. Not only through consistent activism and co-founding Star, a shelter for homeless gay kids and transvestites, but through everyday acts of kindness. Johnson was known to give you the brooch off of his lapel. Johnson was also known to flip out sometimes when called Marsha rather than Malcolm, though back then it was common to use he or she interchangeably with drag queens and feminine gay men. He was also known to go down to the river naked, believing his father was in the water, offering up men's clothes and flowers to King Neptune. Authorities would take Johnson in for months and put Thorazine in his spine. According to Johnson, his first major mental breakdown happened in 1970. In the documentary, Johnson's acquaintance, Rick Shupper, says, I remember seeing Marsha walk down the street in a miniskirt that he had made, and it was clearly see-through. Another acquaintance, James Gallagher, recalls how Johnson had to sleep in movie theaters when he was homeless. They were 99 cents before noon. It was amazing. It was really amazing how he was able to survive, said Gallagher. And Johnson did just that. He survived and persevered. It's still common to use a stage name like RuPaul, both on and off stage, if you're a performer. Yet acquaintances who were once fellow performers filmed and cut into the documentary many years after Johnson's death appear to have let go of their own stage names and personas. Even still, the narrative they paint, more often than not, attempts to recategorize Johnson as a woman and seeks to expunge Johnson from the very manhood he himself claims. Why not allow Johnson to speak for himself without all the chatter and background noise? Something beautiful happens when I put all their voices out of the transcript. Johnson's own story and voice emerges. Without further ado, and in no particular order, some quotes from Johnson's footage without the additives and clutter. I found out that my body was worth some money in those days. I found out that if you're a pretty boy or a pretty little transvestite, you can make a couple little dollars. And then I found out the prettier you look as a little boy or the prettier you look as a little boy, made up as a girl, that's the most money you're gonna make. The ones that used to make the most money were the boys that look like girls. People used to come and bring guns and pull guns out on me because they didn't think I was, I would tell them I was a boy and I was in drag. And after disclosure, Johnson said he would ask if they want to go up to a room. Then, when they get up in the hotel and I take off all my clothes, I can't believe it, you're a boy, they say. I don't know how this man could believe I was a real woman, honey. I was just a transvestite. Maybe it was because of my voice. I don't know. Once in a while, I would run into this lunatic who would actually have it in his mind that I was a woman. And I'd tell him I was a boy. Another day, another illusion. Being a hooker is no easy business for no one. It's one of the most dangerous businesses that you can be in. But if that's the only thing you know how to do. I was no one, nobody, from Nowheresville until I became a drag queen. I didn't get into it right away. I was like butch makeup queen working Gayville, and then I started doing a little different drag, and I started wearing little high-heeled shoes, And I started to put on stockings, and I started becoming a drag queen. I'd never ever done drag seriously. I always just do drag. I never do it seriously because I don't have the money to do serious drag. I wanted to do what my mother said. My mother said, you're gonna meet you a billionaire homosexual when you grow up, and he's gonna take care of you for the rest of your life. My mother never knew much about homosexuality. All she knew was seeing men dress in women's hats and dresses and come to the bar. She never investigated. She never came to a gay pride march or anything. She didn't know that much about homosexuality. And in her whole life, she never wanted to know much about homosexuality. 1969, that's when the Stonewall riot started. That's when I started my little riot. I'd been in gay liberation ever since it first started in 1969. In a 1987 interview, Johnson said that in 1969 he arrived at Stonewall around 2 that morning, and that the riots had already started. And when he arrived, the Stonewall building was on fire. The riots reportedly began around 1:20 a.m. after Stormy DeLavaree, a black butch lesbian, punched the police officer that was trying to arrest her, and then gave the call to arms. Why don't you do something? 1 year later, on the anniversary of the Stonewall Revolution, Johnson marched at the first organized gay march. It wasn't anything like the pride marches today. It was described by Fred Sargent as masses of people carrying signs and banners, chanting and waving to surprised onlookers. In 1973, the Gay Boys Club tried to ban drag queens from marching, so Johnson marched ahead of the parade. I often write about the ways in which male-dominated LGBT and its media have consistently sanctioned and contributed to the dehumanization and humiliation and shaming of butch lesbians. In much the same way butch lesbians have been othered, Johnson was ejected. Not only back then, but also now. The current attempts to expel Johnson from the very category of manhood he claimed until death speaks volumes about the intense perseverance of fragile masculinity. There is no honor in burying Johnson's truth. There's no integrity in bolstering the current political narrative by dubbing over Johnson's own voice. Using the money he made through his own exploitation, Johnson helped pay the rent on a shelter that kept young people off the streets. From his darkest moments, Johnson created light. Out of childhood trauma and homophobia, and later in life, more homophobia, abuse, exploitation, and rejection, Johnson fought in so many ways to make things better for the next generation. Fragile masculinity, but he claimed himself as a femboy. He claimed himself as a man who could be in drag and be mistaken as a woman. This feels so damn surreal. So yeah, the rewriting of Stonewall is taking away Stormy DeLavaree's part as a black butch lesbian in kicking off the riots and trying to attribute that to Marsha P. Johnson by throwing the brick after he had already arrived. I don't even know if the brick throwing is even real at this point. Did he even throw one? Who knows? And then also trying to rewrite him as a transgender woman instead of a homosexual man who marched with pride for years. It feels very surreal, man. Very surreal. All you're hearing is "rawr, gay men are the patriarchy." I mean, yeah, this definitely has like the angry lesbian feminist slant to it, blaming it on men and masculinity instead of the people seeking to rewrite history in general. Was there ever a brick? I don't know. It's a great question. I was gonna say, hearing it from his own mouth is going to be better than like reading the accounts, right? Because like obviously we know which one's the rewriting one, but it's still better to hear it from himself than to just read it. Yeah. Not only are they queering up history, but they're also doing gay erasure at the same time. Yeah. I've talked about how they've been doing this with Stonewall for a while. Rewrite everything, even their own history. Friggin' commies rewriting a history for the trans bullshit. It's like, it doesn't make sense to me, right? Because like the person that kicked off Stonewall already being like a black lesbian, why the need to rewrite a black gay man into being transgender? Like it just doesn't make sense. Let me see if I can like try and skip around and see.
I'm Eric Marcus.
Where they might ask.
Welcome to the second season of Making Gay History.
Click. I'm gonna skip the music.
64, dressed in a coat and tie. Marsha P. Johnson was Randy's public relations nightmare, a self-described drag queen hustler with a long arrest record and a history of mental health issues, who was best known for her role in the 1969 Stonewall Uprising. My plan was to interview Randy at his Art Deco lamp shop, just a few blocks west of the Stonewall
Art Deco
Inn.
based?
But Randy had other ideas. He suggested we go to his place across the Hudson River in Hoboken, New Jersey, where I could talk with Marsha as well. I had no idea they were roommates. When we get to Randy's modest apartment, Marsha's in the kitchen making dinner. After a few minutes, she walks into the living room. She drapes herself in a chair like a cat in slow motion and absent-mindedly starts sorting through her shoulder bag. A frosted wig comes to the surface and then disappears and then comes back to the surface again. Before I can get the wires to the lapel mics untangled, Randy is talking a mile a minute. He's throwing off so much nervous energy that I wish to myself they'd offered me something stronger to drink than water.
Oh, I have my BGM on still. Sorry, chat.
I ask them both to sit still for a second so I can clip the mics to their collars. I go back to my chair, reach across to the cocktail table to my tape recorder, and press record.
Marsha's the only one, she's the only one everyone agrees was at the Stonewall riots. There were a lot of other people, but everyone agrees that Marsha was there, so...
The way I winded up being at Stonewall that night, I was having a party uptown, and we were all out there, and Miss Sylvia and Rivera and them were over in the park having a cocktail. I was uptown, and I didn't get downtown until about 2 o'clock, because when I got downtown, the place was already on fire, and it was a raid already. The riots had already started, and they said the police went in there, and...
Literally him in an interview saying, well, it was already on fire, the police were already in there, I showed up after it started. And this fucking biography thing. Rumor has it that Marsha P. Johnson threw the first brick in the 1969 Stonewall Uprising. Well, who are you gonna believe? The man himself or some fucking weirdo?
Set the place on fire. They said the police set it on fire because they originally wanted the Stonewall to close, so they had several raids. And there was this Tiffany and this other drag queen that used to work there in the coat check room, and then they had all these bartenders. And the night before the Stonewall riot started, before they closed the bar, we were all there, and we all had lined up against the walls, and they was all searching us.
The police were?
Yeah, they searched every single body that came there, because the place was supposed to be closed, and they opened anyway. Because every time the police came, what they would do, they would take the money from the coat check room and take the money from the bar. So if they heard the police were coming, they would take all the money and hide it up under the bar in these boxes, out of the register. And and sometimes they would hide like under the floor or something. So when they got it, when the police got in, all they got was the bartender's tips.
Who went to the Stonewall?
Well, at first it was just a gay men's bar. Mm-hmm. And they didn't allow no women in. And then they start allowing women in, and then they let the drag...
Deadass sounds like Gundam's gay voice. I was thinking that this entire time, but I was like, I don't know if I want to do Papa Gundam dirty like that. I was like, all I could think of was him doing his gay voice for his skits, man.
Queens in. I was one of the first drag queens to go to that place. Because when we first heard about this, and then they had these drag queens working.
Turn this shit off. You might not like it, but all historical events being cataloged correctly is very important. So even if it's not something that you particularly care about or have a horse in the race of, it's still important to not let communists subvert it.
Yeah. They didn't never arrest anybody at the Stonewall. All they did was line us up and tell us to get out.
Were you one of those that got in the chorus lines and kicked their heels up at the police? Like Ziegfeld Folly Girls or Rockettes?
Oh, no. No, we were too busy throwing over cars and screaming in the middle of the street because we were so upset because they closed that place.
What were you screaming in the street?
Huh?
What did you say to the police?
We just were saying no more police brutality, and we had enough of police harassment in the village and other places. Oh, there was a lot of little chants we used to do in those days.
Randy, were you at Stonewall then as well? Did you know Marsha?
No, I met Marsha. Marsha moved in here about 8 years ago. I had met Marsha in 1973 as an advocate reporter. The GAA people had freed her. They locked up our gay sister, Marsha Johnson, but they went into the mental hospital and they snuck...
Our gay sister, Marsha Johnson. Gay sister because he's a gay man who is a drag queen.
Her out in an elevator and they ran out the door. Now the reason she was in the mental hospital is she took LSD and was sitting in the middle of either Houston Street or
it wasn't LSD.
Pulling the sun, well whatever.
It was, what do you call that?
Mescaline?
No, what's that other fear stuff?
Belladonna?
Purple passion or something.
But anyway,
I don't know what they're talking. I don't know. Is that drugs?
Pulling the sun to the earth. But fortunately, before the world ended and the sun hit the earth, the paddy wagon from Bellevue came and took Marsha away to the mental ward, and that's how she ended up getting on SSI as a mental case. Because they obviously saw, you know, she had a history of prostitution going back to '62. And I had met Marsha. I mean, when I did this article, this story, and my impression of Marsha was that she was sweet, but, you know, a little bit spacey. So when this boy I met at the gate, and he said, I said, would you ever go to the village? Oh, yeah, I go to the village. I run around with Marsha. I mean, he was a nice white boy. You know, I said, I don't know that, you know, Marsha's the kind of person that, you know, you should really be hanging out with. Well, to make a long story, this boy really became like my adopted son. But he moved in, I guess, in January, and it was 10 degrees. And he said, you know, Marsha, you know, she's out there, you know, she doesn't have anywhere to sleep. You know, she didn't mind sleeping on the floor. Couldn't she come home and sleep on the rug? And I said, Willie, I said, are you absolutely sure she's not going to rip us off? You know, I mean, I don't, you know. And he said, I know, no, she won't rip us off. Well, Marsha came in, I guess, in 79 or 80, began sleeping on the rug here. You know, I mean, I got to know her and like her. She became I'm a big Marsha fan now. It was so funny because, I mean, I counseled Willie. Marsha wasn't the kind of person, you know, you want to get involved with and run around with, you know.
And you live together now for
It's always Marsha? Yeah. Well, yeah, he was a drag queen, and referring to a drag queen with, like, female pronouns was a very typical... We literally just read that in the other article chat, where you could interchangeably use he and she because they would don the fucking drag identity. This was... I don't know exactly when this recording was. I don't know if this is the 1994 recording, because they said that there was an interview that Marsha did like 4 days before they died. I don't know if this is the one they did or if this is a different interview.
Yeah.
Now, were there lots of people hurt at the Stonewall that night at during the riots?
They weren't hurt at the Stonewall. They were hurt on the streets outside of the Stonewall because people were throwing bottles and the police were out there with those clubs and things and their helmets on, the riot helmets.
Were you afraid of being
This is a rebroadcast of a 1989 interview. Thank you.
Like 10 years before the Stonewall, I was going to jail because I was originally up on 42nd Street. And every time we go, you know, like going out to hustle all the time, they would just get us and tell us we were under arrest.
Drag queen, hooker.
Yeah, they say all you drag queens under arrest. So we start, you know, it was just for wearing a little bit of makeup down 42nd Street.
Who were the kinds of people you met up at 42nd Street when you were hustling up there?
Oh, this was all these queens from Harlem, from the Bronx. A lot of them are dead now.
Oh, he just said that so matter-of-factly.
Anybody from those days. But these were like queens from the Bronx, from Brooklyn, from New Jersey. Where I'm from Elizabeth, New Jersey.
See, I
say, Chad, the New Jerseyan sounds nothing like me.
I shouldn't start on this note, but it puts me in the worst light. Because by the time Stonewall happened, I was running my button shop in East Village. And for all the years in Mattachine, and you see the pictures of me on TV, I'm wearing a suit and tie. And I had spent 10 years of my life going around telling people homosexuals look just like everybody else. We didn't all wear makeup and wear dresses and have falsetto voices and molest kids and we're communists and all this. And all of a sudden, Stonewall broke out, and there were reports in the press of...
That's crazy how he's like, I'm trying to convince people that we're not all communists. And now communists are trying to rewrite the history. Oh, God, it's never ending.
Chorus lines of queens kicking up their heels at the cops like Rockettes, you know, we are the Stonewall girls and, you know, fuck you, police. And this, I thought, you know, it's like Jesse Jackson used to say, rocks through windows don't open doors. I felt this, I was horrified. I mean, the last thing to me that I thought at the time, they were setting back the gang liberation movement 20 years. Because, I mean, all these TV shows and all this work that we had done to try to establish legitimacy of the gay movement, that we were nice middle-class people like everybody else and, you know, adjusted and all that. And suddenly there was all this, what I considered riffraff. And I gave a speech. I was asked to speak. I was asked to speak at the Electric Circus, which was a major... which was a major... Oh, look, Marsha, you just got me. Where are you going? What were you doing?
It's kind of gagging.
Oh, she's outside?
Yeah, come on, sweetie.
I've got the...
Here it is. It's up here.
the little...
What's happening?
Watch out. God, you're so dumb.
You think so?
Okay, you were saying about Stonewall.
Yeah, I was saying I was running my shop in East Village, the button shop, the big hippie shop. And when this happened, I was horrified because it was civil disorder. Somewhere I saw a picture from the Stonewall.
You're so
and it had a
dumb.
big
I
sign
felt
up from
that
the
in my
Mattachine
soul.
Society, which was one of my base groups. It said the Mattachine Society asked citizens to obey the police, to not obey the police, but to respect law and order, to act in a lawful manner. In other words, the Mattachine itself was basically a conservative organization, and they asked me to speak at the Electric Circus, and I got up and said that I did not think that the way to win public acceptance was to go out and form chorus lines of drag queens kicking your feet up at the police. And I was just beginning to speak, and one of the bouncers at the Electric Circus found out that it was a gay thing, that the guy up there talking was gay, and somebody standing next to him, he said to them, "Are you one of them?" And the guy said yes, and he began beating the hell out of him. And this riot broke out in the Electric Circus.
The fucking, are you one of them?
And I remember driving him home because the kid was only about 21 or 22 years old. And he said, all I know is that I've been in this movement for 3 days and I've been beaten up 3 times. I mean, he had a black eye and, a puffed up face. I mean, no serious damage.
That's kind of fucked.
But the thing was that you were dealing with a new thing. And it shows that what my generation did, we built the ideology. Are we sick? Aren't we sick? What are the scientific facts? How
You feel like modern commies would call this guy a Nazi? Oh, they definitely would.
Like, Karl Marx wrote the book. That's what we did. But it literally took Stonewall, and here I was considered the first militant and a visionary leader of the gay movement, did not even realize when the revolution, if you want to call it this thing that I thought would never happen, that a small nuclei of people would become a mass social movement was occurring, I was against it. So I'm very happy Stonewall happened. I'm very happy the way things worked out.
Now, you mentioned an organization that Marsha, you were involved with.
Karl Marx wrote the book? Which book? Did I miss something? Gay fucking communists. Did I miss something? I'm gonna rewind.
Ever happened that a small nuclei of people would become a mass social movement was occurring, I was against it. So I'm very happy Stonewall happened. I'm very happy the way things worked out.
Now, you mentioned an organization that Marsha, you were involved with.
How far back do I have to go, chat? What did I miss? Further back. We're at 12:14. I'll go to like 11.
That the guy up there talking was gay, and somebody standing next to him, he said to them, "Are you one of them?" And the guy said yes, and he began beating the hell out of him.
I wonder if the guy asking, "Are you one of them?" was asking if he was a commie, not a gay.
This riot broke out in the Electric Circus, and I remember driving him home because the kid was only about 21 or 22 years old.
I'm not looking at chat
and
so I
he
can
said,
listen.
all I know is that I've been in this movement for 3 days and I've been beaten up 3 times. I mean, he had a black eye and, a puffed up face. I mean, no serious damage. But the thing was that you were dealing with a new thing, and it shows that what my generation did, we built the ideology. Are we sick? Aren't we sick? What are the scientific facts? How have we been brainwashed by society? We put together Karl Marx wrote the book. That's what we did. But it literally took Stonewall, and here I was.
I did miss that. I didn't notice him saying Lenin, and then Karl Marx wrote the book. I did not hear him say that. That's fucking crazy. They've always been commies. So wait a minute. This guy was just saying that he had been fighting to ensure that not all gays were looked at as communists. But now he's talking about how Lenin and Marx wrote the books on this shit. So which one is it? Are you not a gay commie?
Considered the first militant and a visionary leader of the gay movement, did not even realize when the revolution, if you want to call it this thing that I thought would never happen, that a small...
Is he just giving examples of people who wrote books? Well, that wouldn't make any sense, because he also says the revolution, right after it. Let me rewind again.
Shows that what my generation did, we built the ideology. You know, are we sick, aren't we sick? What are the scientific facts? How have we been brainwashed by society? We put together, like, you know, Karl Marx wrote the book. That's what we did. But it literally took Stonewall, and here I was considered the first militant.
Okay, you know, I see what he's saying. He's saying, like Lenin and Karl Marx wrote, like, the Communist Manifesto kind of shit, his generation of gays wrote the book, quote unquote, on, like, gay liberation, question mark. So yeah, I see he's using it as a weird comparison. To be fair, he wasn't saying they are commies. He was making the comparison. His generation wrote the ideology like Marx. The next generation did the revolution like Lenin. Yeah. It makes. I had to listen to that a few times because I missed it entirely the first time, and then I was like, wait, why the fuck would he say that if he was trying to say like not all gays are commies?
What the hell is
Took a couple of listens for my brain to fucking understand what was happening. Thank you for having me rewind, chat.
Visionary leader of the gay movement did not even realize when the revolution, if you want to call it this thing that I thought would never happen, that a small nuclei of people would become a mass social movement was occurring. I was against it. So I'm very happy Stonewall happened. I'm very happy the way things worked out.
Now, you mentioned an organization that Marsha, you were involved with. What was the name?
Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries with Miss Sylvia Rivera.
Star.
What was that group about? What was it for?
It was a group for transvestites.
It was a bunch
men and women transvestites.
Mm-hmm.
If we go back to, where did they talk about Star? Where did they talk about Star? Here. Johnson and Rivera founded Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries with closed, fed, housed, and advocated for transgender youth. So they're even rewriting the people that Johnson was trying to help. As Johnson quite literally said here, that it was for transvestites, which are drag queens.
It was a bunch of flaky, fucked up transvestites living in a hovel in a slum somewhere, calling themselves revolutionaries. That's what it was, in my opinion. Now, Marsha has a different idea.
Oh, holy fuck! What the fuck? Did you hear that?
Men and women transvestites.
Mm-hmm. It was a bunch of flaky, fucked up transvestites living in a hovel in a slum somewhere, calling themselves revolutionaries. That's what it was, in my opinion. Now, Marsha has a different idea.
Holy fuck, Randy! Randy brought the fucking fire. God damn.
Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries started out as a very good group. It was after Stonewall. They started at GAA. Mama Jean DeVente, who used to be the marshal for all the parades. She was the one that talked Sylvia and Rivera into leaving GAA, because Sylvia Rivera, who was the president of STAR, was a member of GAA, and started a group of her own. And so she started Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, and she asked me would I come and be the vice president of that organization.
You know, they had an apartment, they didn't have the money to keep up the rent, and they began fighting over who was using drugs or who was paying rent or who was taking whose makeup, and I mean, it got to be pretty low life and pretty ugly.
No, the building was owned by Michael Umbers, who was in jail. And then Michael Umbers, when he went to jail, the city took over the building and had everybody thrown out.
I have a tab for that.
The rent was paid to Michael Umbers, who went to jail, and Bubbles Rose Lee, who was the secretary of the STAR. She had all kinds of things mobating around the building and stuff, you know. And so the city just came and closed the building down.
I'm being MK Ultra activated?
The dream of Star House was to provide a safe place for street kids. But those kids were just a little younger than Marsha and Sylvia, who were in their early 20s and still had to hustle to survive. Marsha died in July 1992. Her body was found floating in the Hudson River near the piers on the western edge of Greenwich Village.
Oh.
She was 46. The New York City medical examiner ruled her death a suicide, but Marsha's friends believed she was beaten to death or accidentally fell in the river. They lobbied for a new investigation, and 20 years after Marsha's death, the district attorney's office agreed to reopen the case. To learn more about Marsha P. Johnson and Randy Wicker, please visit makinggayhistory.com. That's where you can listen to all our previous episodes and also find photos and really interesting background information on each of the people.
This was really interesting background information. And here's the link to the video if you guys want to
people to thank for making this podcast.
Keep this in your back pocket. Don't let them rewrite any history, as it were. Don't let them rewrite any of it. It's not fair when they do shit like that. And that's also very interesting that, once again, Bridge is pushing an author that is trying to rewrite history as commies do. It's very interesting. Very interesting. Really interesting and nice that it's an interview. Yeah, it's nice to hear, like, actual interviews of this stuff. Always good to just, instead of only reading things in an article, to hear things from people's own mouths. Because when someone says something like that, you can then look at these disingenuous authors and these other disingenuous people trying to push a narrative that Marsha started Stonewall, that Marsha threw the first brick when he wasn't even there, that Marsha wasn't a homosexual man who had already been fighting for gay rights for years. Marsha was a transgender woman. They're trying to remake who this person was and what they did after their death. Glad to hear someone else talk about Marsha being a hero who deserves to be spoken about truthfully. It's just like, I just want history to be told accurately, right? If people did things, if people have, reserved their place in history, they should be spoken about for what they did. Not having, like, different things attributed to them or having their identity, like, changed after their death. Like, I think that's kind of fucked up to do. And it kind of disrespects the person you're talking about.